We are now being joined here in the Lagos studio by barrister Inibehe Effiong, a lawyer and human rights advocate, and Professor David Aworawo of the University of Lagos. Good to have you both here on Perspectives.
Thank you.
You know, Professor Aworawo, just before we went on air, you told me something very interesting. You know, we've been focusing on women all through for this abuse. But you said some men are also actually, some boys are also actually victims of homosexual lawyers and lecturers. You know? So what I want to know is that even though, you know, some people have been called out for this dastardly act, how do universities encourage students to report staff and transfer the shame from the victims to the abusers?
Well, universities do a lot in this regard. From time to time, we see the university making releases, encouraging people who are harassed to report to the authorities. They direct them specifically to the student affairs and sometimes the counseling unit, and that they should go there. They should not be afraid that, you know, there will be confidentiality. They will be taken care of. Right now, as we speak, in my University of Lagos, if you go around, you see the poster everywhere. Known to sexual harassment, report cases, and then the specific, you know, places they will go to report their cases.
Where can they go to report the cases?
Usually student affairs, sometimes to the counseling unit.
How are they protected so that they don't fall victim to the lecturer they have reported?
They are protected because of course, those who handle these matters are mature. They listen to them, and then they seek ways to get in touch with the authorities in that particular department and faculty that the student belongs to. And, you know, there's a way they handle it without putting the student in jeopardy.
How long is this process?
It depends on how far the lecturer has gone. If it is just a case at the inquiry stage, maybe the lecturer just said a couple of things and the student suspects that if he or she gives space, the thing will escalate. At that stage, the lecturer could just be cancelled and it ends there. But
the lecturer could be what?
Cancelled,
okay,
and it ends there. And of course, the dangers of continuing further than that will also be presented to the lecturer. And in most cases, you know, the lecturer will know there is danger ahead, and you know they would.
So they won't hold her marks or.
No. In fact, at that point, it becomes a burden to the lecturer. That even if the student does not do well, the lecturer will be afraid that would they not link this to, you know, what had happened before and all that. So the lecturer will be careful to ensure that the scripts of the students are marked according to the guidelines, according to the marking guide and all that, so that if anything comes up, the lecturer can, you know, defend himself. So there are mechanisms for, you know, protecting the students. I don't know of any student who has been disadvantaged, who had the courage to go and report and consequently disadvantaged. I don't know of any.
Professor, our previous guest described how this has become a standard in many public institutions across the nation. Is there a level of frustration in the system economically amongst professors in our public institutions that's causing this widespread sex for grades, money for grades?
Of course, there are. Of course, it's clearing. I've said it several times. I've done research over the years. I still continue to do the research. I do not know of any country in the world where lecturers are as poorly paid as in Nigeria. No.
Yeah, but that doesn't give them the right to become predators.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I'm trying to respond to the question she asked. So of course there is a link. If people are hungry, they can't meet their basic needs. The tendency is not justified. Let me just make that very clear. The tendency to, you know, want to demand for money will be higher than if the person were satisfied, if we were well taken care of. It's not justified, but is a major cause. But of course, there are people who are greedy. We'll put them in two categories. People who are deprived economically, who are compared to, want to, you know, demand for money from students because of that. And people who are greedy, that despite, it doesn't matter what they are paid, how much they earn, how rich they are, they will still want to, you know, extort students. There's that second category as well. So, but the thing would be less if people were well, if the pay was better, if people were, you know, better taken care of. It will be a lot less than.
I'm going back to that money issue because that's not the bane of this conversation. It's not the monetary aspect. It's the predatory actions of the men not being able to control their desires. So even if they were being paid well, that doesn't necessarily stop them from being predators.
That's true.
The two don't really correlate. It
Yes.
doesn't really stop them from being
As far
predators.
as financial inducement is concerned, yes, poor pay is a factor in the pervasiveness. But the sexual thing has practically nothing to do
Exactly.
with it. What I've come to discover is that people, level of self-control differs widely.
Yeah.
And it also seems that the propensity for wanting to have sex, libido and all that, is far higher for some than others. I say this because there are people who have done things like this before, who are on the road to doing this, and they are, called, their attention is called to the need not to go that direction, they are cancelled, and they return. The same set of people who have done this thing before, who have been either sanctioned minimally, you still find them return to the same thing. You wonder, why is this man putting himself in harm's way for what I can't make sense of? So it comes to the conclusion that self-control is a major issue.
Very important.
And,
anyway, let's call our dear lawyer here. Enibehe said something about making the crimes institutionalized. I just find it difficult to pronounce that word. So making the crimes institutionalized. In other words, every crime should be handled in the university. Because, the punishments meted out to lecturers. Shouldn't it lie within the powers of the authorities in the university, where the law begins and ends within the university where the act was committed? What do you think about that?
Thank you for the invitation. The problem is actually more endemic than we are willing to admit. I personally have interacted with a number of victims, students who were sexually molested, not just harassed, molested by lecturers. The reason why you would hardly find an undergraduate step forward, a lady step forward, female student step forward to see lecturer A or B sexually harass me, is because, without prejudice to the points Prof has made, my experience and my appraisal of the issue is that in a vast majority of tertiary institutions in Nigeria today, especially both public and private, there is no allowance for civic or democratic engagement. University managements over time have become very totalitarian. No allowance is given for the even existence of independent student unions, including University of Lagos. They have suspended student unions. This has happened across most of the tertiary institutions in Nigeria. So you are not going to fully appreciate why the impunity is there, why this is endemic, except you speak to the culture of repression in a tertiary institution. The case of University of Calabar came to light because, out of a multitude, these female students were basically pushed to the wall. But what you don't know, or what many Nigerians may not know, is that in public universities and even private universities, law students you would expect to be more vociferous, to be more outspoken, are actually among the most repressed. The reason why it took those female students in the University of Calabar too long to speak is that as a law undergraduate in Nigeria, a typical Nigerian university, from the date you pay your acceptance fee, the university management, the lecturers, the deans of the faculties of law, they will continue, and this, I'm not saying everybody, but it is actually on a large scale. They will remind you every day that if you speak against us, if you report a lecturer, if you want to fight the system, you will not go to law school.
Wow.
Yes, that is why it took them so long to speak.
Regressive education.
The matter is actually very endemic. What is the way out? I don't believe today that Nigerian universities have the institutional reputation and capacity to address sexual harassment. And I'm not speaking to say that there are no instances where lecturers have been held accountable. I concede that to Prof.
But in the minority.
But it is in the minority. It is in the minority because when you come out to speak, other lecturers who are also involved in this, they will be waiting for you. There have been documented cases of female students who were delayed graduation, who were persecuted on account of taking steps to report university management.
Social media has helped? Or do you think that the students should personally approach lawyers to defend them? if the system doesn't help them, if the educational system is not helping them?
It is a dilemma. I told you at the beginning that I have spoken with a number of female students across Nigerian universities, including one who told me a law lecturer raped her.
Wow.
And raped, not just harassed. And I told her, look, we can take this up. Let's get evidence and all that. At the end of the day, I was crying more than the bereaved. But do you really blame them?
Yeah, because
now, the National Assembly, and this is where I must hold Nigerian lecturers accountable. Because while we fight for better welfare, better pay, they are poorly paid, the government is not addressing their issues. ASU is also complicit in this menace.
Surprisingly
because ASU came out to oppose the sexual harassment in tertiary educational institution bill. A bill introduced in 2019 passed with the concurrence of the Senate and the House of Reps.
Why do you think they resisted it?
They are protecting their members who are going to be the major target of the bill. Unfortunately, the former President Buhari failed to assent to it within the 30-day constitutional framework. So I'm hoping that the 10th National Assembly will revisit that matter because as of today, it is an embarrassment that a country that is supposed to be the most populous black nation does not have an existing legal framework to address sexual harassment in Nigerian universities. If that bill had been passed, one of the innovations was that every tertiary institutions by law will have to establish a sexual complaint committee. And there are provisions in that bill to protect female students who come forward.
Yes.
And the penalty was ranged between 5 to 14 years in some cases. ASU came out to say they are not in support of lecturers who are found guilty of harassment or molestation of female students.
Okay.
So today, the law is not there, specifically on that issue. And if you want to go and make a general complaint of rape, it is a tall order. So we need ASU to come out, support this bill. If there are areas they have consensus, press it. But to say entirely that we are not going to support it, it is wrong.
That leads us to question, what are the backgrounds of these professors, the leaders of these institutions? What are their qualifications? Has anyone looked into what
I want
they've
to
done in the
here.
past?
I think that bill will need, we support, one, I want to correct an impression. ASU did not, I did not object to the entire bill. There are aspects of the bill that ASU complain about. And it makes sense to draw attention to. The bill seems to have been made in anger in response to sexual harassment cases that happened at a particular time. And because it was made in anger, there are aspects of it that you find almost senseless. For instance, the bill, aspects of the bill indicates that if a lecturer likes a female student, this lecturer cannot like a female student. You can't like your student. Your student can't like you. That is illegal for you to even. We're not talking about harassment now. Someone you genuinely like. We have.
I don't understand. What do you mean genuinely like?
Good. We have many of our lecturers whose wives today, as we speak, with their former students.
Okay.
Yes. There was nothing like harassment. There was nothing like grade. That is the space.
You are smiling.
Yes, that is the space where lecturers function. If a young lecturer wants to marry, where will he go and get his wife?
Must he get his wife amongst the students?
He mustn't, but he can. But the law says
But there must be lines that are drawn, like he rightfully says.
Yes, that is the point I'm making, that we support the bill wholeheartedly, but there are aspects of the bill that will need to be looked into.
What aspects of the bill?
For instance, I mean, any student that comes to university is an adult. The lecturers themselves too are adults.
No, you're crossing the line.
No, not crossing the line.
No, but are you saying that's why you didn't approve of the bill? Because
we approve of the bill, but there are for instance, those who work here in our rights. If I were a manager here and there is a colleague
that's
here,
different. When you're a lecturer, you have no business fancying your students. Because that's crossing the line.
Well, I don't
know. And I hope strictly on education.
I'm even hoping that's not the reason you didn't approve of that bill.
No.
Because it doesn't give you the opportunity to fancy
there are
your
aspects
students.
of the bill, like I said, the bill seems to have made it.
No, but that's the aspect you're talking about. It doesn't hold water.
Let me even make an addendum. The University of Lagos also has its own sexual harassment policy.
Okay.
That seems to be in tandem with the bill, with the bill that was passed in July 2020, but not assented to yet. Even when you look, it's an offense. If you look up to a particular point, you know, it's...
You just have to know where to draw the line. If you're a lecturer and somebody is a student...
These are some of the... People
there are
like
lines
me,
that
I have
should
no
not be
problem.
drawn. But
I have no problem at all.
Let's hear what our lawyer
I
has to
think,
say.
yes.
The point Prof has to address is that the nature, the very character of the relationship between a lecturer and a student is the position of authority occupied by one. It's a fiduciary relationship, one that is anchored on trust. So when a student comes to say, as a matter of fact, when you go through JAMB, write JAMB, and gain admission, what you're applying for is studentship, to graduate, get a degree. You don't write JAMB. There is no course in JAMB offered by JAMB or any institution when you are asked to state how you want to get married. When you nobody goes to university with the intention of finding a wife. If a lecturer says, if I cannot marry my student, go to your church, go to your mosque. There are beautiful ladies there. But the point I'm going to make is, Prof has made an argument that it is possible in some cases for a genuine relationship to arise. But how do you draw the balance?
Exactly.
What happens when the lady says no? What becomes of that relationship? The lecturer has a power. He can choose to victimize the students. Recall, I made a point, and I said this is the issue that we have to look at.
Yes.
The reason why this matter is not seriously dealt with, while many students, and I speak as someone who passed through public institutions, academic institutions, the reason why most students, especially the ladies, will not come forward to lay complaints is that within universities themselves, there is no allowance for students to express themselves. There is no allowance. Just about barely a few hours ago, Ambrose Ali University just dissolved student union government. This is happening across the entire country. So when you have this climate of impunity, climate of repression, in a place that is supposed to be an ivory tower, in a place that intellection is supposed to be the culture, the norm, and people are not allowed to express themselves. I had an experience as an undergraduate where this particular lecturer that everybody dreaded said you have to buy handout before he will give you continuous assessment question.
You have to buy
what? Handout. And one day I simply walked into his office. And I told him, if you don't give me my continuous assessment question now, by the time I leave here, I'm going to the VC's office to report you. My colleagues are saying, oh, you are not going to graduate, you are not going to pass. The man brought it out, gave it to me, and said, oh, whenever you have the money, come and pay.
Wow.
How many students have the courage to do that? Because for the male students, the demand may not be sexual, but it is monetary. I'm not condemning all lecturers in Nigeria. They are honorable lecturers. But to the point that universities have not appreciated the gravity of the matter, have not put in place effective mechanisms to protect victims and bring culprits to justice. There is a national crisis.
Thank you so much, Inibehe, and thank you so much, Aworawo, for your very, very strong, opinionated points. And we hope that, universities in Nigeria would at least reintroduce students' unions
if I can just
to have a voice. Yes, because we're rounding up soon.
Yes, I agree with him entirely that the decision not to allow student unionism to function.
It's imperative to get that back.
It's not right.
Yes.
But I disagree with him that, lecturers are perceived to have powers they don't have. There are mechanisms for whether student unions exist or not. We support that schools.
But let's hope that is put more into practice.
There are too many channels for students to go and report themselves.
But it's obviously not getting the desired results. Otherwise, there will not be protests.
I have served on several panels where professors were sacked.
Okay, let's hope they sack more professors and the justice meted out to them is deserving of their crime.
If they are guilty.
Thank you so much. If they're guilty. Thank you so much for being with us on Perspectives. For this nice, robust conversation we've had this morning.
Absolutely.
The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Where you see wrong or inequality or injustice, speak out, because this is your country, this is your democracy. Each time a man stands up for an ideal or asks to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope. We will keep drawing attention to the scourge within our universities, hoping that one day the crusade for justice will finally make it a thing of the past. And always remember, as I always say, life is a learning curve. That's all we have time for today. You've been watching Perspectives here on Arise News with me, Ruth Osime.
And with me, Olatorera, Majekodunmi-Oniru. Let's unearth and celebrate genuine characters and not wealth or positions without depth. Positions are meaningless and unfruitful when tainted with faulty characters. Faulty characters in positions of power hurt multitudes upon multitudes of people. Every human deserves a good life of merited success, undamaged self-esteem, peace, happiness, and love. Meritocratic leadership and greater humanity are two keys to a better world today. Our world needs a much stronger dosage of healthy love, care, and happiness. Thank you for watching Perspectives. Thank you to our special guests for joining us today. Have a great weekend and see you all soon. Goodbye.